So, but the unless is, if you can't build a fence, you can't have the marijuana. It's not that you get a free card.
No.
I don't have to have a
No,
fence.
because
so.
like in Richmond Gold Run, there's plenty of parcels that have large acreage, and fences aren't allowed because they're in the natural resource conservation area, and the only fences that are allowed are near the house.
So in those areas, you can't grow.
Well, you could probably go
Outside.
near the house. You can't have a perimeter fence.
So,
So that kind of answers
7-foot fence, Mr. Elbaum?
7 foot. And then my other
But
question.
wait for it, Let's stick to issue by issue if we can, please.
Yes.
We're trying to take small bites. 7 foot? Are we good on 7 foot, gentlemen? Mr. Chairman? But next week, are you going to be good on 7 foot?
Unless I get my head beat in by.
A constituent in the meantime?
Yeah.
You've got the thousands so far, Council.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Elbaum, carry on.
My next question.
Yes, sir.
We talked about it a little bit briefly, and I don't know, we have an expert here that maybe can help us out, but what about these plants? I mean, I know there's all different types and varieties that grow different ways. Are we going to limit the plant height so that it has to stay below the 7-foot fence, or are we just going to let it go 3-4 feet above?
So, okay, check it out. I'm operating on the premise that that's a detail, the likes of which,
I wouldn't even go there.
I mean, I'm trying to get a broad consensus here on some basics so we can make forward progress. And we went there with a 7-foot fence. I don't know if pot plants grow taller than 7 foot or not. I don't know. So,
Randy, you want to
I mean, we heard some
One guy said it might be
testimony
like
from
30
people that they're like redwood trees sometimes. I don't know.
Randy, would you have a comment?
With cannabis plants, yeah, they can get above 7 foot, but your average plant is not getting bigger than that. Your average plant is 5 to 6 foot on a decent one.
Right.
A lot of people aren't able to produce plants that are bigger than 2 or 3 feet.
I've listened to these two guys, Dennis Hines and Randy Bach, I think it is, over the course of the last several meetings, and I got to tell you, I'm taking what they say is accurate.
You gotta go home and grow marijuana now.
So we'll teach you. How long would they be?
Let's move on, Mr. Council.
When do they reach their peak height? Is it just
Peak height, everything should, depending on, like you said, there's different varieties. You have sativas, you have indicas. Indicas stay squat and small. Sativas grow a little taller, a little lankier. But sativas flower later in the season. But every plant, regardless, sativa or indica should be fully matured and done growing by the end of August, very beginning of September. By that time, they're starting to show flowers, and that's about it. They're not going to get much bigger than that.
So 7-foot fence.
7 foot.
Excellent.
Another question, go ahead.
Do you have another question, sir?
Well, can you provide a proviso that the plants that are being grown can't exceed the height of that fence? Because we did have people, there were a number of people came down to Fence Hall in Lake Forest, and they were testifying that some of those plants up in Lake Forest were, exceeding.
Well, can I express to you my position on that issue, sir, without getting in trouble?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I haven't formed an opinion yet.
So there are those that don't want to see it, think about it, or know its existence. And I don't know that comports with where we are right now in the law. And a 7-foot fence is a pretty darn big fence.
It is high.
And I accept Mr. Bach and Mr. Hines' representations about the majority of plants probably being less than that.
If you've got a 7-foot, a 20-foot or a 30-foot setback from a 7-foot fence, and the plant gets to be 12 or 13 feet high, you're going to have a hard time seeing it over a 70-foot fence.
Over 13.
Tied down. Yeah, that's what the people in Lake Forest, that was people up there were saying the plants were
Okay,
like.
let's move on. Let's move on to 3.
Okay. So we concluded a maximum number of 12 plants per parcel, indoors or out, between 1 and 11 acres. So tier 3 would be 11 acres on. Any parcel 11 acres or larger in the county. And
2,000 feet setback.
well, we'll talk about. Let's talk about setbacks, because to be consistent with the manner in which we resolve the other issues, we talk about setbacks first. what kind of setbacks on these larger parcels. Remember, if it's perfectly square, 1 acre is 208 feet down one side. And if you're talking 10 acres, 1 acre, if you're talking 10 acres,
That's 2,080 feet.
well, that's if it's 10 individual acres stacked on end for a long, narrow strip. But if it's a square, what do you got? You've got several hundred feet. Pardon me? It's several hundred feet, but yeah.
Well, I don't care if it's 11 acres, but I want that marijuana patch no closer than 1,000 feet to the nearest residence.
Not gonna be within their residence. Say you were growing on their
A
residence.
neighbor.
Yeah, not counting the guy growing it. I'm talking about the neighbor.
It would be an adjoining, residence on an adjoining, a dwelling on an adjoining parcel.
Correct.
Yeah.
Could we stop for just 1 minute and say, so on premises that are larger than 11 acres, do we agree that if you only want to grow 12 plants, you can do that with the rules of category 2?
For yourself, yeah. Each
Okay.
person who resides on premises can grow 12 plants for themselves, indoors or outdoors, for their own personal consumption. That's the first sentence.
I know we're talking about category 3. Sam,
That's the first sentence of category 3.
Now, what Richard is suggesting is that if they own 11 acres, like for example, when Mr. Egan plants his 12 plants.
yes.
Sorry.
So there's only use, you can be close, you don't have to be 1,000 feet.
Yeah.
You got it, sure, you got it.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we should probably articulate that.
yeah.
Okay. And all right. So if they comport with the number of plants expressed in the second tier, they also get the benefit of the setback, the reduced setback limitation from the second tier. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Is that something you
You
can?
know, if you didn't have that in number 3, wouldn't you automatically have it from number 2?
I don't think so,
No.
because the way we've worded it, we're saying if you have a parcel larger than 11 acres, then this applies.
Okay.
So how many plants do you? Sorry, we were talking about setback. What kind of setback do you want for parcels 11 acres and larger? I know what you saw.
For your
Where 12 or more plants are being
For
grown.
your own use or for like 80?
Now you have caregivers that get
When
in.
you get into caregivers and that, they're
Yeah.
dealing with more than just the individual
I
use.
think the limit is 72, we decided on that
That
already.
was the max, but we
I thought we
we
decided
didn't-
We haven't decided.
We're still talking setbacks,
we
right?
were
Yeah.
gonna- we were gonna phase into that.
Let's talk about plant
Because
count.
that-
Depending on what plant count you all arrive at, you might dictate what the setback is.
150 feet, 72 plants.
How many
Mr.
plants?
Counselor, you talking about how many plants for a caregiver or for your individual?
Total number per parcel. Total number per parcel.
Oh, total number.
Total number for any parcel 11 acres in size or larger. What's the maximum number of plants that you think ought to be okay to grow?
You're 72, what that does, that
72.
gives 12 for yourself, and then 60 that you could provide to others. And
10 others.
Well, on the previous tiers, we didn't specify how many you can grow for yourself
Well,
and
no,
how
I'm
many.
just saying is,
But
but
now
now we're
we're
saying
talking-
72 per parcel. The guy can grow it all and give it to others,
Sure.
or they can grow it, consume some, and give the
Sure.
rest.
And my suggestion is that we don't make any statement about how many are limited for themselves and how many for. We just say maximum number per parcel, and that would be what,
The purpose of using
72?
72 is the way I come up with 72 is that gives the person, he could have 12 for his own personal use, he and his significant other, spouse, whatever, and that would leave 60. And if you figure 6 per
6
person,
times.
that means he could provide care to up to 10 people.
That's certainly a new definition of the rule of 72, as far as I'm aware.
With a 150 foot setback.
Well, that's Rotary now, come on.
No, I'm thinking for
Okay, so this number is,
maximum number of plants for any parcel 11 acres in size or larger.
if you're 1,000 feet from the nearest residence.
Well, no, that's a setback. We'll talk about that in a second.
Okay.
What we're talking about is the number of plants. How many plants?
I think
Maximum.
72 is too high.
I understand.
Do I hear 76?
Yeah, it's gonna be 48's the other one, the other count.
Well, I think we need to bump it back to like 36 at the very most, because otherwise we're gonna have, everybody is gonna be flocking to Lassen County to go commercially for collectives, and they're gonna be buying any parcel available for whatever money they can get.
I think we need to
For-
just make another tier in there.
Okay?
Maybe we need another
Yeah,
tier.
we talked about another tier.
Because if we're 11 to 40,
I think 40 was the.
40 is the big magic number you can do 72 on. 40 and
Yeah.
above, who cares? But from
Well,
11, there's,
I think 1,000-foot setback is what's gonna stop that. If you gotta have 1,000 foot from the nearest residence, you're not gonna do that on 10 acres.
Well, Moon Valley's gonna blossom now.
Well, it could be the Lassen County Economic Stimulus Package.
So 540 acres is a pretty substantial investment. I mean, to move from a separate county, Butte County passed acreage limits, and they weren't able. They have so many people growing out there. Their problem is so different than what we have that they can't even visit the gardens there. There are just too many of them. So having that is here would work here. Is you can tell where the gardens are. We had 5 nuisance gardens. They have hundreds of nuisance gardens. You know,
So
We're
fair
trying to avoid
characterization.
that, Randy.
So we were talking about, just to keep on track, let's keep going down the track. We were talking about 11 acres and beyond, and then we had discussion about another tier.
Yeah, I'm with Jeff, because in our previous discussions, we kind of tiered, maybe the tier should be 1 to 40, or
11 to 40.
11 to 40.
11 to 40, and then anything over 40 would be the 72 and half. I
11 to
think
40.
when we were down at Jensen Hall, we were at 40 was the cutoff point.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah,
I can add in another tier.
so I think 11 to 40 and we go back down to,
maybe 36 plants like you're
36
saying.
plants.
Yeah.
So from, give me just a second. Am I hearing you right, that from the first 2 tiers would stay in place, and the third tier would be from 11 acres to 40 acres, and that would be a maximum number of plants of what?
24 would be, I like 24, but 36 would be max.
That's getting close to here. We don't need
24, yeah.
24 plants, however, whether they grow it for themselves, or whether they grow it for 12 patients, or 1 patient, or whatever. As long as they got recommendations to back it up.
That allows for a small caregiver operation.
24 plants. Maureen had a question. Sir?
You're in tiering this, and you're talking about per residence.
No. Per premises.
Per parcel.
Premise.
Yes.
That's a vacant parcel, is a premise?
Per dwelling.
Well, there's also a requirement that the person reside on the
Correct.
I want to make sure that that's carrying through to each of these.
Yes.
tiers.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, no question.
Sorry to get back in the weeds here about fences, though.
Yes.
Visqueen fences are what I see all over, and they're
This
not
queen
attractive.
fences don't get it.
Did we define what a fence is and what a fence will look like?
It's identified as
that definition.
fully enclosed by an opaque fence of at least 6 feet in height.
Why would that prevent a visqueen fence?
Good answer. That's a good
Material.
I can make it more well defined than that.
Yeah, I think that's what I hear from people as being a major issue is looking
A
at
fence that can't be seen through.
Well,
Yeah, but that could be a tarp hanging
Wood.
through a chain.
Wood,
Has
a
to be
nice
wood
wood
construction.
fence.
Either wood, metal, or
All
Not
right, I
metal,
can do that.
not metal, that's ugly.
Well, it could be one of those bowl chain link fences with the slats that you buy.
I don't think that those
And
really
razor wire.
protect from looking through. You drive by and you can see what's in there.
Oh, look, there's weed on the other side of that 6-foot chain link
And a
fence.
big dog.
And the wind just blows them apart.
A nice
Look
wood
at self-storage out there
All
on
right.
Johnsonville.
I don't have the answer. I think it's just something to think about.
A
Thank
solid
you. I
fence.
can more fully define that by the time we come back.
It's
But
not just sheets
we've
of
got
plywood.
another tier now, and that's fine, because the third tier is from 11 to 40 acres, and that's 24 plants, however the person on the premises divvies that out.
Inside, outside, doesn't matter.
Inside, outside, setbacks, what are the setbacks?
150 feet.
Yeah, okay.
I don't have no problem with
150 feet. Okay, let's talk about number 4,
Is
and
that
that
dwelling or property line?
property.
property line.
Because you're gonna be more than 50 foot from a neighboring dwelling, so 150 feet eliminates the need to worry about the dwelling.
From the property.
Can't imagine on a parcel that's from 11 to 42 acres that they're going to put the house right on the line. And if
At
they
least
do,
what?
that the,
Well, they're still gonna be at a minimum 150 foot, because your setback's gonna be 150 foot from the property line to
Okay.
develop your
Got
growth,
it.
so you're gonna be,
Thank you.
you're gonna be more than 50 feet away from the dwelling.
So let's segue to 40 acres plus.
Wait a minute, how many plants are on that?
21.
11?
24. Yes.
Can we stay with tier 3 for a second?
Yes, sir.
Is that gonna have to be fenced too?
Oh, yes. All of the outdoor grows will have to be fenced, at least according to what I've been proposing so far.
Okay.
I'm not hearing any different.
No.
Okay? So let's talk about 40 acres plus.
72 plants, same 150 foot setback?
Absolutely.
80 plants,
80.
1,000 foot
We'll
setback.
give you.
We did hear testimony this morning that you may need some plants to propagate for next year's crop.
That's why you have 72.
Eight-
Mom and dad.
That's what I know.
72 mature plants and 8 young ones.
I'm not going to get into the, I'd rather not us get into the
How
mature
many
versus
is that?
outdoor
400
versus.
and something?
If you're gonna change 72, you might as well just say like 99 or some outrageous
Yeah.
number. I would say 72 is what we all agree to.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of
Very
plants.
lot of plants.
That's seven Dennis Heinz's living in one location. And he smokes a lot of pot and he only needs 10 plants.
But here's,
Excuse me, if I could correct you. My recommendation is for 19 immature plants or 10 mature, because about half of them will turn out to be males, and they're not suitable for medicine at this time because there hasn't been any research on the males. So like I wind up at the end of my growing period with 10 plants, but I always start with 19.
How?
Well, you're gonna have 72 to work with, so you're gonna have plenty of ability to cultivate out.
Yeah.
I only have 3.5 acres.
Well, then you're stuck with only 12 plants. Yeah.
So it'd be limited to 12 plants, but my recommendation is for 19 plants. And my friend who lives there and his wife, they both have recommendations for 19 plants each. So when we start our garden, we put in 57 plants.
You're not gonna be able to do that on 3.5 acres.
Oh, I realize that. You know, what if this ordinance goes through the way it's written, and the setbacks that you guys are discussing, and the plant limits, I'm going to be out of luck. I'll have to drive to Sacramento or Reno to get my medicine. Like, I won't be able to grow on my own property, and you're going to get rid of me finally. I'll stop being a thorn in your side, because I'll start looking for another place to live. I'm sorry. I like it here. I like all of you guys and everything, but you're taking my medicine away. You're demonizing this plant, and this very well may be the cure for cancer. Now put that in your pipe and smoke it. Excuse me for being funny, you know, but like I can't help it. After 44 years of working with drunks, even when I get serious, I'm funny. So go ahead and laugh. I don't care, you know.
How tall does the plant have to be before you realize it's going to be, what is it?
Oh, okay.
Wait.
Good question,
Yeah.
Doctor.
How big does it have to be before you know it's going to work for you?
Okay, a lot of times, you know, when they're like 4 or 5 feet tall, they'll start showing their sex. And there's some people who are more experienced than I am, they might be able to sex the plants when they're younger. But I have to wait until they start to show their flowers. So usually along about somewhere in August, after the equinox, when the days start getting shorter than 12 hours, that's when the plants start to flower out. Now then you can tell when you see the males. I usually just pull them up and chop them up, put them in the compost. Otherwise, if I'm going to breed, I'll select the males who have the best characteristics. They're biggest, bushiest, have the brightest colors or more purple in them. And I'll save those males to pollinate my females that year so that I can get some good seeds for the next year. And I've been improving my quality for 5 or 6 years I've been growing over there. I have plants now that are virtually frost-proof. They're like frost-resistant, like cold water crops. Because we have done this. We've bled out the ones that died from the frost. I make a great progress here, but I'm sorry, you guys are shooting me down.
Not trying to.
Mr. Chairman, could I address Mr. Hines?
Then Randy had a question, go ahead, Jim.
I want to address you, Dennis. First of all, I don't want you to go to Sacramento and get your medicine. I don't want you to leave Lassen County. I want you to stay here. We're not talking about demonizing. That battle was long since gone. I mean, if you want to fight the arguments from 20 years ago, fight the arguments 20 years ago. Today, society's accepting the fact that you can do what you're doing, and we're here to embrace that. But the question is, how you do that has to live in harmony with everybody else who's trying to live here too. And we're trying to set these limits to make it so you can stay here, not be demonized, you can enjoy your way of life, because we want you to stay here. Because I tell you, it'd be a sad day for Lassen County if you were to move away. Bottom line. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. And I want you to understand that we're serious about this. But at the same time, what you're needing to do has to be able to work with other people who are here needing to do what they want to do. And we're trying to figure out the balance. So this is not about demonizing what you're doing. It's trying to make what you're doing workable for yourself and for everybody else. And we've got, let's put it this way, the fact that these guys are all being, serious about getting this, and this is the first time, probably the only county in the state that has a county council that is enjoying crafting an ordinance to try to help you get something done. The rest of them are probably still lobbing bombs at you. So embrace Mr. Burns in that respect. I appreciate that.
Thank you, and I appreciate your attitude. I really appreciate the time that you guys are putting in on this.
So you may have to start off working with only 12 plants. I realize that may not give you everything you want, but at least you got 12 plants that nobody can take away from you.
Right.
Okay.
We were talking about.
Thank you,
We were
Dennis.
talking about.
Yeah, one more question.
Yes, sir.
Randy.
Well, if I might make a recommendation on like what he's saying about how he has to select males, and a lot of people are doing that from seeds, and the males have no use. It's just pollen that he's collecting to put on a female that will produce seeds.
I hope you
for next
rephrase
year.
that statement and say that males have no use. I hope
Yeah.
that's a correct statement.
Male cannabis plants have no use, except for pollination. But by August, like he said, by August, everything should be, the end of August, everything's sexed, everything's able to be told, whether it's a male or female, so you can wean out the separate ones. So having, like he said, the doctor recommends 19 and 12. So if you guys put in something in the ordinance saying, by August 15th, middle of August, all plants have to be selected for the full season grow. And by then, you're still not dealing with smell by then. You're not dealing with smell for several weeks. So by then, you would be concentrated down to exactly what the ordinance says, the 12 plants, the 26, or the 36.
Well, but the problem we have, if I could address Randy, Mr. Chairman, and that is, okay, so we changed the numbers. Well, now all of a sudden, to get to 10, you need like 19, as Dennis says. So we say, okay, you can have 19. Well, now they think that the end number should be 19, so in order to get 19, we need to have 32. So we have to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah,
So,
and that's why Proposition
we
215 put in the 6 mature and 12 immature, because by a certain point, those 12 immature ones are gone, because you selected your 6 mature from those 12.
To be clear, Randy, that those numbers came from SB 420. Those numbers came from a legislative effort to put a cap on the number of plants, or a goal, or a guideline, if you will. The problem was that was specifically stricken by the California Supreme Court in People versus Kelly, because 215, as passed by the people through the initiative process, said whatever you reasonably need. And then come the legislature to try and cap what the people passed by initiative.
And then the federal
Council Supreme said you can't do that.
And the federal attorney general then steps in there and says, we're not going to prosecute anybody unless they have more than 100 plants. So immediately all those other definitions change from what everybody agreed to, 99. And so what we've got to do is we're looking at it from managing land use in a way where we're making it so people can compatibly live within close proximity to each other without killing each other.
Okay, let's keep
So,
back to Mr.
Mr. Chairman, we left off with Tier 4, which was 40 acres plus, 40 acres and a mule. And the question is how many plants?
72.
Is that the consensus, gentlemen?
Yes.
Yes.
I think it should be less than that.
Yeah, but Ken, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Alpha, but you know you're out there on your own on that one?
Well, I'm saying, Mr. Alba, using Mr. Hines' definition, out of 72, you'll be lucky if you get 38 good plants.
Yeah, I came down from 80, so you go up to 70.
So my point is serious though.
36 to 72.
My point is serious. We've learned a lot since we started about this whole process. I don't think anyone in this room would disagree with that proposition. We've appreciated, I've certainly appreciated the education I've received by people that know a lot more about it than I do. And at the same time, we're trying to forward something that we can work with. It's not going to be perfect. Okay?
See, I would
There's
rather- I
no
would
ordinance
rather-
that will
I
be
would
perfect.
rather put the extra amounts on a larger parcel like that for one reason.
Right.
Hopefully, it will attract those who want to grow the larger amounts away from the smaller parcels and the more densely livable areas and move them out into the areas where there's space. And I think that's where 72, taking the jump from 24 to 72 above 40 acres, I think is hopefully going to move that away from where people are concentrated in their living.
My point is plainly that this is an ordinance that is in part born on compromise. Compromise amongst the five of you. Try and craft something that we can all
And Mr.
work
Hines
with.
has to compromise too.
We are all having to compromise to some degree. Now, it may well be that a year from now, when we see the results of this on the ground, as it were, and the growers, if you will, have found, I don't know, some unforeseen loophole in this. I've tried to see around every corner. Can't guarantee that 100%. But that there are some circumstances where people are growing, and we've got some people in the community that are upset, and the ordinance doesn't somehow cover that we come back for an amendment. That possibility exists.
My argument for the 72 plants is where this is for medical marijuana. This isn't to grow for a collective or a
No,
cooperative.
this 40 acres is for, you got a guy growing legally with the proper permits from the state, feds, the county, everything, growing for other people that live in town that can't grow or whatever. And they gotta be totally, regulated with all the permits and everything. And to grow for 10 other people is not a big deal.
I think we're getting out there a little bit too far. I mean,
No.
if it is,
Well, I think what we put into place now is going to be the template, because come next year when the voters vote on recreational sites, this whole thing is going to be more than just dealing with medical marijuana, and we want to make sure and have something in place that works
But
to deal with
there's
that.
a lesson to deal with that, though, Mr. Supervisor Chapman, and the lesson is the Tehama experience. Tehama was at the forefront of regulating this from a nuisance perspective. They're the ones upon which the structure of this ordinance is principally based. Sierra, many other counties have constructed their ordinances based on the Tehama template. And interestingly, and they were very proactive, interestingly, and I think I made reference to it once before at the last meeting, they've gone to no outdoor cultivation countywide, period.
Fresno County too.
Well, Fresno County was much more aggressive and said no cultivation, period, indoors or out.
But we have a different dynamic up here.
Absolutely
I
we
mean,
do.
if we shut it down,
Yes.
they're going to go out to public lands where everybody likes to enjoy our public lands. And I'd rather have these people be.
Again, my only point with that, gentlemen, is that we can, for lack of a better way of putting it, improvise, adapt, and overcome. If we have challenges that face us, a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, you retain your police power as a board of supervisors, and you have the authority to amend.
If we
You're
have
not
to
passing
clamp
a law
it, we
today.
clamp it down, we clamp it down. If we can
Absolutely.
open it up, we can open
You
it up.
have that
And
ability.
I think two things I want to say. If you raise the dump fees too high, everybody gets dumping out the forest.
Right.
If we put too much regulation on and not enough to compromise what we need, then people say they're not going to stop growing it.
No.
We
They're
set out
gonna-
from the beginning
They're going
to
to start doing it
try
illegally.
not to drive people
so
underground.
what's
And
our
that's-
setback going to be on this, if we go 72 plants, what's our setback going
150 feet.
150 feet.
to be?
No, from there,
1,000 feet.
15.
No. Just,
I don't know what the setback would be, but I still want 1,000 feet from the nearest residence.
So if we go with 72 plants for 40 acres plus, the question is, what's the setback?
150 feet is more than enough.
You're That's gonna
The
be-
purpose of the setback is, the purpose of the setback is to move it away from where people's dwellings are at. And if they've got a 20-foot setback on their property, and you've got 150 feet on the growing property, now you got at a minimum 170 feet. That's
170
assuming,
feet's not very far.
But, I mean, if you're talking 40 acres, I mean, that's a big chunk of ground, and you can, there's no reason why it can't be 1,000 foot.
Randy?
With like I said before, with 1,000 feet, 40-acre parcel on a square is a quarter mile by a quarter mile. That's almost 1,000 feet. In my situation, you're in the mountains, so having mountains, you have to be able to choose a place that gets adequate